The Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall have announced an upcoming visit to Canada. Charles and Camilla delivered the news online, saying they will be arriving in May, and they'll travel to Newfoundland and Labrador, Ottawa, and Yellowknife on a trip to commemorate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Let's go to CTV's royal commentator, Richard Berthelsen. He joins us now to talk some more about that. Richard, Prince Charles and Camilla, this is part of marking the Platinum Jubilee, I guess?
It is. The various realms in the Commonwealth usually have a royal visit in a Jubilee year. In the earlier Jubilees, of course, it was the Queen herself. Now, obviously, that's not possible. So various members of the royal family are making themselves available to the different realms in the Commonwealth to visit. Those visits, though, are at the invitation of the host government. So this is an invitation that the government host of the visit will be the Government of Canada, Government of Newfoundland, and the Government of the Northwest Territories. So they'll be undertaking events in Canada and ceremonies that are relevant to Canadians. And the release particularly noticed the importance of communities in that visit, but also reconciliation efforts as well. So we can expect that the Prince of Wales will be engaging with Indigenous Canadians.
All right. So how do they decide where they're going to visit?
Well, it's the Government of Canada that has decided that these are the visits they're going to do with the provinces that have the time and the interest in a visit in May. As I mentioned, the 15 realms, those countries within the Commonwealth which regard the Queen as head of state, are almost all having visits this year as in a Platinum Jubilee year. And, these visits are negotiated by the hosts, things that are important, in this case for Newfoundlanders, things that will be important to the federal government in the capital, things will be important in the Northwest Territories, and also the royal visitors. Prince Charles has an organization called the Prince's Trust in Canada, which works with military people who are leaving the armed forces, getting them into new careers, working with young people, working with sustainability. So he'll probably be undertaking some engagements that relate to that, and both the Prince and the Duchess have military regiments in Canada, so we may expect to see them interacting with the Canadian forces as well.
Tell me a little bit more about what you expect as far as the interaction go with Indigenous communities. And I ask because there was a visit, of course, to the Pope at the Vatican to talk about residential schools. Clearly, colonization is more of an issue now that is at the forefront than it ever has been. So what do you expect from those interactions?
Well, the Prince of Wales has, almost since his very first visit in Canada, he has had the Indigenous relationships have been important to him. They are important between the Crown, in whose name the treaty was signed, and the First Nations. So there's a very interesting relationship between the Crown and First Peoples. Obviously, the Crown's agents, the Government of Canada, have not lived up to the treaties. So sometimes that discussion is brought up with members of the royal family, and sometimes members of the royal family undertake engagements to focus on things Indigenous people are doing in terms of, things his charity might be doing with Indigenous communities around employment or sustainability. And I can't imagine that issues around reconciliation and, particularly the issues we're facing right now with the young people who went through residential schools will not come up in some way. I think it's a very different relationship than that with the church, because the church ran those schools. The government, of course, has a role in that too. So it is a thorny area, but ultimately, the relationship between First Nations and the royal family has always been a fairly close one, and the royal family have always included different aspects of Indigenous communities in visits. And of course, that's all done with the approval and the agreement and the involvement of the Government of Canada.
They were last year 5 years ago?
They were here 5 years ago, 2017, our 150th anniversary. The Prince of Wales got the Order of Canada at that time. They were in Ontario. They were in Ottawa. They were in other communities around the country. They haven't been back largely because of the pandemic. It was expected Prince Charles would be back in 2020 for a world tour. He has, over the course of his adult lifetime, been in Canada basically every 2 or 3 years, which is his responsibility as our future head of state. And it's also in the interest of Canadians to get to know him and to involve him in things that are going on in Canada, given his future role.
All right, Richard, I got to leave the conversation there. I'm out of time, but thanks for your time. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Marella.